Partnered by Times Influence.
India is the third largest economy in the world and is poised to grow rapidly. India's ranking in the Global Competitiveness Index for 2016-17, released by the World Economic Forum, improved 16 places and is now at number 39, making it the fastest riser up the ranks among the 138 countries surveyed. To discuss how India can enhance its competitiveness, Institute for Competitiveness partnered with Times Network to present Porter Prize 2017. The event was graced by the Honorable Minister of Railways, Suresh Prabhu, and Minister of Power, Piyush Goyal.
Let me congratulate the great event that is taking place in collaboration with Institute of Competitiveness with Times Network on India's National Competitive Forum, which is an important issue because we need competition. When we have gone for market forces, if you don't get in a fair competition, real competition on the ground, we'll never succeed. So to make this happen, we'll have to find out the best way of promoting competition and ensuring that competition really happens on the ground. We need a regulator. So a lot of groundwork has been done. We have created competitive commission, but still we need the institution to function properly. We need also rules to be framed, people to understand this and try to work on it. So I'm sure this forum will help us to get some new ideas on it. I wanted to be personally present, but unfortunately I'm traveling. So I'm sure I will learn from the deliberations, which my good friend Amit will send it to me, and then we'll take it forward. So congratulations to you. I've been participating in this forum earlier. This year I cannot participate, but wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
It's an absolute pleasure for me to welcome you all for the India's National Competitiveness Forum. And I would like to thank Niti Aayog for really enabling this event. They're a partner for this event, and we wouldn't have been able to pull it off without their help. I would also like to thank everybody else who's involved. That's how it is. Can I now have the honor of inviting Mr. Piyush Goyal, the Honorable Minister for State for Power. Mr. Goyal, for your remarks on competitiveness, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Michael Porter, Vivek, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Porter, on behalf of the Government of India and all of us for coming to India and enlightening us with your theories, the theories of competitiveness, the theories of cooperation, and in a sense, the theory of bringing compassion along with competitiveness and competition into the workings of business, into the workings of government. In fact, it's very appropriate that we are having this discussion when we celebrate 200 years of Ricardo first talking about his theory of comparative advantages of industries, of nations. Ricardo had, of course, floated the idea. I think Dr. Porter fine-tuned it to a very cogent and a very viable model on which today industry, on which nations can progress, can plan their future, and can have a compassionate bent of mind, particularly when Dr. Porter talks about social justice and the best and most effective use of corporate social responsibility, which is not only about something you do at 2% or 3% of your profits, but it's something you do in your very business itself. The most recent goods and services tax, the GST reform, is an example where Prime Minister Modi was able to bring together all different viewpoints on one page. Viewpoints as starkly contrasting as a communist to a capitalist viewpoint. And I'm delighted to share with you, Dr. Porter, and with the esteemed audience, with some small examples, how this government's work has been oriented towards creating a long-term framework in which this country can develop, can grow, and where that growth can be sustainable. where that growth can be with sustainable lifestyles, where that growth can be with compassion towards the lesser privileged sections of society. The end objective can never be met. Things are better, but not good. And I'm delighted you said that, Dr. Porter, because the day we start thinking that things are good, I think that will be the end of all thinking, all innovation, all further improvements to the working of the government. And I think it's important that we continuously be in a state of flux, in a journey towards a better tomorrow. And I would think getting better than what we were is going to be the way forward. The good will always remain a long way ahead, because the objective and the style of this government has been to set very aggressive goals, very large targets, look at things to scale, do your programs skillfully. The most important thing, end of the day, is economics, is money. Now, one can look at it in a very wrong meaning, but I think the sense that I take out of this is that, end of the day, all that we do, when measured in economic terms, should result in good for the people of India, should result in good for all stakeholders, and in that, being cooperative and collaborative certainly can be the difference between success and failure. This government came in when there was a period of lethargy, there was a despondency about India. We had investments not taking shape, we had international investors concerned about the way things were shaping up. And at that point of time, Prime Minister Modi brought into the Indian way of thinking, in the Indian government's way of working, very bold and decisive leadership. We have not fought shy from biting the bullet, taking very aggressive pro-reform measures. In fact, this must be the only government which on the floor of the House said that being pro-business is not being anti-poor. When you want to be pro-poor, you have to be pro-business, because it's the combination of good business practices which will ultimately help India get out of the poverty trap.
It takes decades to really transform a country's potential and prosperity, and to spread that prosperity broadly across citizens. No one government can do it.
Institute for Competitiveness partnered with Times Network to present Porter Prize 2017. The event presented an exciting platform for industry leaders, management gurus, government stakeholders, and aspiring entrepreneurs to understand the best practices and challenges facing competitiveness in India.
Of course, all our working has focused on the management principles of transparency, the management principles of outcomes, not outlays, the typical thinking of government, what we are spending, what will be the budget outlay. We have focused our energies to try and get outcomes and look at the outcomes, what every one of our programs, every one of the government's initiatives will result in, coupled with very time-bound execution. Any project that's taken up is taken up with a commitment to execute it at scale in a time-bound manner. I'll illustrate with an example. If you look at the digital fiber optic setup in the country, now one may argue, as Singularity does, that whether 10 years down the line this will be necessary at all. But today we need to get the internet to every nook and corner and village in the country. And therefore, when we came in, and there were only 358 kilometers of digital fiber optic, Prime Minister Modi decided that this has to just expand to the length and breadth of the country. And in less than 3 years, we have expanded to 200,000 kilometers from barely 358 kilometers 3 years ago. When we looked at energy efficiency and saw the game-changing potential that it had, the country decided we will move to LED lighting. and in a span of 5 years, make India 100% LED. And Dr. Porter, you'll be happy to know, we've almost achieved 50% of our target in the first 2 years, so that by 2019-20, once India converts to LED for its lighting needs across the country, we would be saving $6.5 billion in consumer electricity bills annually, not to talk about the 80 million tons of carbon dioxide that we would be reducing every year, and the 112 billion units of electricity, the 112 billion kilowatt hour of power that we would be saving annually. To my mind, this has been a 3-year saga of creating probably one of the most dynamic and forward-looking governance infrastructure that the nation has seen over many years, but we are certainly only in a journey. It's 3 years along the journey. We look to benefit from the wise sage and counsel and advice of transformational leaders like yourself, Dr. Porter. We believe in learning from the best practices worldwide. We believe your theories of cooperation, competition, and compassion will help India go to the next level of development in a far more organized, far more structured manner, leading to a better quality of life for the billion-plus people in India. Once again, thank you very much, Dr. Porter, for being with us in India. I'm also eagerly looking forward to hearing you later in the evening, and will certainly look to engage with you to see how we, each one of us, can do our job better in the years to come. Thank you very much, Dr. Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Goyal. So having said that, I think now is the time that we have all been waiting for. In fact, we have Professor Michael Porter with us. In fact, I've had the privilege of knowing him for the last 12, 13 years. And I have had the privilege of working with him on many issues over a period of time, working in the area of competitiveness, in the area of social progress, shared value, and so on and so forth. And I've also had the privilege of teaching his course on competitiveness. And I always call him as my friend, philosopher, guide. And of course, this man needs no other introduction rather than saying that he is the father of the modern strategy field. And without further ado, may I welcome the man himself, who is coming to India after 14 years. Professor Mike, can we have you upstage, please?
Well, thank you, Amit, for that wonderful introduction. It's been very, very long time since I have been here in India. I remember many years ago I did a project with CII to kind of take a look at what was going on in this country. That was in the early years after I'd published my book called Competitive Advantage of Nations, which started to lay out this framework. And what we found then was just a lot of challenges. I have very strong memories of the big discussion about electricity, and there was not enough electricity, and we were in a very different place. But I have been extremely excited to come back to India today because it's really quite remarkable what is beginning to happen. What we know about building prosperity is it's a marathon. You know, it's not a short race. It takes decades to really transform a country's potential and prosperity, and to spread that prosperity broadly across citizens. No one government can do it. It's impossible. What you can do in 4 or 5 years or 10 years even is just move the needle. You can't solve this issue. There needs to be an ability to continue to pursue priorities and a strategy that stretches over long periods of time. A competitive economy is one where both firms can compete, but the average citizen is also improving. We can't have business doing well and the citizens doing poorly.
Institute for Competitiveness partnered with Times Network to present Porter Prize 2017. And the highlight of the event was a special presentation on the idea of competitiveness by Michael Porter, renowned economist, researcher and author.
So we've learned a lot about competitiveness over the last 20 or 30 years. I've had the privilege of working with many countries around the world on this topic, including my own. By the way, in America today, we are struggling. We are facing some real competitiveness challenges. But I think what's fascinating to me and what's so important is what is beginning to happen in India. Because India has a special place in the world. This is a country, I think, that has a legacy that is very complicated. A legacy of colonialism, a legacy of bureaucracy, a legacy of socialism, a legacy of interventionism, a legacy that's challenging for building competitiveness. This is a country that has crushing challenges of lifting billions and billions, not billions and billions, but at least a billion people or almost a billion people out of very poor circumstances. India is a country that we need to succeed. If India can succeed, the influence and impact that will have on the rest of the world will be unbelievable. I believe personally, I feel this very personally, I think it's so fundamentally important that this country succeed. And as I say, something very interesting is happening. I think there's an opportunity that may be unprecedented to make progress right now. But if we're going to do that here in India, we're going to have to think strategically about it. What I'd like to talk about mostly in this brief session we have is, what have we learned about competitiveness? What have we learned about the fundamental causes of economic prosperity and the set of steps and choices necessary to move us in that direction? So, where do we start when we start thinking about competitiveness and prosperity? Well, I think the shocking thing about this topic can be seen on this chart. This is like a dartboard. Look at the tremendous differences in prosperity among countries. This is one of the great fundamental challenges of humanity, of why we have so many countries doing so poorly, unable to make progress. But we also see some opportunities for progress. We see some countries that have made great headway, others that are stuck. How do we get ourselves on a path that allows us to improve our standard of living? India, of course, on this chart is in a good place. Now, we'd like to see much higher income in this country. So one of the questions we have is how to get off this chart onto the chart with the very wealthy countries. But the good news is there's something going on in India that's very positive. Now, what we've learned is that if you want to progress your standard of living, if you want to become more prosperous, you've got to increase your competitiveness. What do we mean by competitiveness? Competitiveness happens when we can do two things at the same time. First, we've got to create an environment in the country where firms operating in India can compete successfully in domestic and international markets. For a country to be prosperous, business has to be successful. But we know that it's not just firms that have to be progressing. A competitive economy is one where both firms can compete, but the average citizen is also improving their standard of living. We have to do these two things together. We can't have business doing well and the citizens doing poorly. So many countries get stuck in one side doing well or the other. in Venezuela, the citizens have been given massive subsidies and all kinds of support and free gasoline and all this stuff, but business in Venezuela can't compete. We have to see that business and society have to both win. Now, in order to create this unique ability for both citizens and business to win, we have to be productive. Productivity is the ability to create a lot of output, valuable output per day of work. The number one central challenge of any economy that wants to be competitive is to build productivity for everybody. We have to have existing firms and workers more and more productive over time. The more and more productive they get, the higher the average income is going to be. This is kind of the iron rule of the global economy. We need as many people in our society that want to work to be able to join the productive workforce. That's called workforce participation. It's not just having the people working being productive. We also have to create an environment where people that want to work can enter that productive workforce. And India, of course, has a big issue with workforce participation. We have a lot of citizens that aren't really participating in a very significant way in the economy, and that is really holding down our income as a society. Competitiveness is not low wages. You hear this a lot. You hear people say, well, our wages are high, so therefore we're not competitive. Well, that's crazy. The goal of competitiveness is high wages. But make no mistake, India is not going to be successful unless we create an environment where business in India is successful. We can't be anti-business and pro-prosperity. Indians have to understand this. There's a legacy of business in this country that has many people very concerned and even angry. We have to get over that. We have to create an environment where business can thrive, and we have to have citizens that understand that that's part of building the prosperity of the country. We've got to make that work. We have to deal with the abuses. We had really some bad business-government relationship in the past. We got to change that relationship. And I have seen miracles happen. I think we have to have a shared commitment that we're going to get better. That we're not about obstructing, we're not about slowing down, we're not about complaining, we're about getting better. And how do we put that culture in place? I think it's the opportunity. It's painting a picture of a future that citizens in this country can get really, really excited about. I'm confident you can do it, but we have a long way to go. So thank you.
With our socialism legacy, we don't think that. India has a huge public sector. So what would you say about that?
Yep. We see countries that have found very effective ways to migrate their publicly owned companies towards real companies.
Partnered by Times Influence.